Hey folks, and welcome to another video from A Plain Truth. This is going to be a difficult one because I put out a piece a little while ago that I got a lot of, not a lot, but I got some grief from friends when I said 5G. I think you can stop it, think again. And the reason is because it's so highly advanced. They've been planning it for so long. They just make the dots connect whenever it works for them. But the technology they've had for 100 years, we've had free energy for over 100 years. We don't have it because they won't give it to us. But what else have they had? Well, it looks like they're going to be using 5G for whatever they want to change our bodies, to change our minds, to change the way we interact with each other, because they're going to be controlling everything we do, and from inside our homes to outside our homes, using this new 5G. And it's also the same waves they use for massive crowd control, and they've used in the past, which we're going to get into here. But this is the global rollout is well underway. And for those of you that don't know exactly what 5G is, it's utilizing frequencies up to 6 gigahertz. The 5G application will require unlocking a new spectrum bands in higher frequency ranges from 6 gigahertz up to 100 gigahertz and beyond, utilizing sub-millimeter and millimeter waves to allow ultra-high rates of data to be transmitted in the same amount of time as compared with the previous deployments of microwave radiation. Microwave radiation, the kind of technology in many of our homes actually interacts with human skins and eyes. Now, what's really terrifying about all this is it operates in the same range of the 5G operates in the same range of hertz and gigahertz as does the anti-war active denial systems and microwave energy. You see a microwave energy truck here in the back. The policemen aren't going to be needed. These goons aren't going to be needed at all. All they need is one of these machines from the ground, but we're going to get into why that doesn't matter either. But this is just from the woods batons to stun batons to water cannons, all funded by U.S. taxpayer dollars, freaking plasma lasers that can vaporize your skin. U.S. military is working on perfecting. If they say they're working on it, they already have it. And what I want people to understand, please, about technology, I was in Wall Street for 20 years, it's so much more advanced than they give us. If you're flying at a plane at 30,000 feet, at 500 miles an hour, and they can find you an IP address, you can download and upload the technology to each individual laptop, computer, or whatever you're using. What do you think the military has had for 50 years? Remember, it was DARPA that gave us the internet. They'd had it for a long time. So it can vaporize your skin and use for crowd control. The highest setting on a current model will let loose a full scalable thermal ablative effects through common natural clothing at a minimum distance of 100 meters that would painfully vaporize the outer layer of skin rather than burning it, will be turned into gas. Yes, vaporizing skin, scalable thermal ablative effects. So they can do it also from the sky, and this is what we're going to get into because they already have used it. And big shout out to Dennis J. Kucinich, who tried to stop the engineering, the geoengineering, the mind control from above and whatnot. Negotiations aimed at the ban of space-based weapons. So this gets into 1991, non-ionizing radiation. Remember the date, 1991. Among the published experiments where pulsed microwaves cause the synchronization of isolated neurons with the frequency of pulsing of microwaves. For example, a neuron firing at a frequency of 0.8 hertz was forced in this way to fire the impulses at a frequency of 1 hertz. As well as pulsed microwaves change the concentration of neurotransmitters in the brain as part of the mechanism which causes the firing of neurons and reinforced or attenuated the effects of drugs delivered to the brain. So again, the dates, let me move this over here. We see here, 1975, military expert published pulsed microwaves produced in the brain on a human subject. I did a 3-hour documentary, Touchless Torture, Target Humanity, which gets into this. Again, 1982, biotechnology research on aeronautical systems. While attention should be toward degradation of human performance, through thermal loading and electromagnetic field effects, subsequent work should address the possibilities of directing and interrogating mental functioning using externally applied fields. 1995, Navy project, non-lethal electronic weapons. 1988, National Bioethics Committee warned the neuroscience is being increasingly recognized as posing potential threat to human rights. 1999, Neuroscientist Conference, sponsored by the United Nations. Declaration reads, today we have intellectual, physical, and financial resources to master the power of the brain itself. Again, 1999, folks, and develop devices to touch the mind and even control or erase consciousness. Control or erase consciousness. Remember Men in Black where they used that little flasher thing to erase ladies' memory? It's real. We wish to profess our hope that such pursuit of knowledge serves peace and welfare. Yeah, right. All right, so this is really critically important. Do you remember the genocide that occurred in Rwanda back in the middle 1990s? Operation Crimson, Crimson's Red Mist, electronic slaughter in Rwanda. Spooks now use technology in Baghdad that was proven 1 million dead in Africa in Rwanda. This was all a genocide caused by electronic weaponry, psychoelectronic weaponry. It's called Operation Crimson Mist. During the late afternoon of April 6, 1994, a hail of cannon shells tore through the fuselage of commercial airliner flying overhead central Rwanda. Several seconds later, the blazing plane exploded on impact with the ground, killing the president of Rwanda and the president of Burundi and most of their senior officials. In that fatal millisecond of time, the entire political command structure of Central Africa was decapitated, leaving the way open for Operation Crimson Mist, the most obscene terminal mind control experiment ever mounted by the United States of America against a sovereign nation. The United States of America against a sovereign nation. Remember that. Crimson Mist has been used again recently on smaller scale in Iraq and is now beyond doubt. Now, also remember in Egypt, when they had the riots in Egypt with Occupy movement that started there, they were spraying them and inciting anger and riots through geoengineering as well. And also they used it up in Oregon during the Lavoy Finicum killing him and the protest against the federal lands when they were trying to take back the federal lands. They sprayed them with lithium to calm them down. All right, so moving on. As Habra Mana and his colleagues made their death dive, a small group of American men and women lounged around in a large hut at the edge of a discreet capital in Kigali, temporary home for their 3 unmarked C-130 Hercules transport planes. All crew members carried forged credentials showing them as, quote, atmospheric researchers employed by authentic civilian American agency. But these were the only for emergency identification if one of the aircraft was forced to make an unscheduled landing on unfriendly territory. For all practical security purposes, neither they nor their 3 large aircrafts were even in Africa. When the news of the presidential crash came in over the VHF radio, one of the Hercules planes was swiftly prepared for takeoff. The flight engineer checked the attachment of the rocket-assisted takeoff packs, while the scientists made final adjustments for large microwave dish mounted on the rear loading ramp of the aircraft. And here you can see it here. It was this strange and esoteric piece of equipment alone that would directly contribute to the deaths of more than 1 million African civilians during the 100 days that follow. 1994, folks. Though completely silent in operation, the single microwave dish had more killing potential than a whole squadron of AC-130 Spectre gunships armed with 50 Gatling cannons, willing to commit mass murder. Though officially tagged an experiment, none of those present had any doubts that this was merely a cosmetic cover for the gruesome operational work ahead. Each member had been carefully vetted and then vetted again by U.S. intelligence to ensure they had the right stuff and were philosophically committed to 2 objectives. The first was the need to control or eliminate political dissent by remote means in the run-up to the 21st century, and the second was the need to stem or reverse massive population increases around the world, Club of Rome, which threatened to overwhelm existing natural resources, especially water and food. Intrinsically, this required a willingness to commit mass murder, and everyone present had passed this critical test with flying colors. We're number 1. But then, all right, as Hercules engines started, blah, 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 the Hercules 130 made a carefully calculated pass over the advancing Hutu. It was an operation to get the Hutu and the Tutsi fighting each other, and then suddenly it went berserk. Eyes glazed, the mood of the Hutu crowd went from simple anger to uncontrollable rage, and within minutes, hundreds of assorted Tutsi body parts were flying through the air, creating electronic rage. What the Hercules crews had just achieved has been an open secret since the late 1950s, when researchers accidentally discovered there was a precise control brain wave for literally everything we do and for everything we feel. The problem back then was each of those control brain waves, rage, fear, panic, lethargy, vomiting, and so on, had to be transmitted with an accuracy taken out to 3 decimal places where it would not work. But years rolled by, the advent of transistors, microprocessors, the operational application of precise control brain waves became practical reality. The C-130 crew were actually engaged in electronically augmenting, good word, electronically augmenting a pre-existing state. Remember that the agents and security service personnel first had to point the Hutu tribesmen in the direction of the Tutsi to induce reasonable anger and make sure they were appropriately armed. Only then could the C-130 go to work with precise control brainwave of rage, augmenting and thus upgrading crowd behavior from that of just angry demonstrators to an uncontrollable genocidal maniacs. Although not classic, this was and is unquestionably mind control, for the simple reason that external means were being used to force an irresistible change in behavior. It gets worse. One of the leading lights in this field, Dr. Elizabeth Rosher Bice, who is a nuclear scientist, and research at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Stanford Research Institute, professor of physics at JFK of California, research consultant at NASA and U.S. Navy, blah, blah, blah. She says, with enthusiasm, quote, "Give me the money in 3 months, and I'll be able to affect the behavior of 80% of the people in this town without their knowing it. I can make them happy, or at least think happy, or make them aggressive. I can do whatever they want, I want them to do." This has been technology that was known a long time. So in the Rwandan Hutu tribesman example shown near the start of this report, the crew of the C-130 Hercules only needed to know the width of the target crowd on the ground and the width of their own microwave beam at any true altitude. With those 2 values available, it was simply a matter to adjust the beam width to accurately bracket the target crowd from any altitude chosen. They did the same in Baghdad. I'll put this in the show notes, but you can see the technology is greatly available, and now we're making the case that the same frequencies they're have been using on these crowd controls is the same frequencies that are being pulsed into us with the psychotronic weapons that are part of the 5G. So can they use mind control once they get a 5G of all the people that are in the range of the 5G millimeters? You can bet. All right, so in the end, there were stories to tell, and this is a book I read probably a decade ago, which you can read about the Rwandan Institute, and you should really read about the Holocaust that was caused by the United States, but no one's held them accountable. Left to tell, discovering God amidst the Rwanda Holocaust. But the other important thing to note is, folks, is that if we have love in our hearts, if we forgive, if we have openness, and if we have compassion for others and empathy, there's much more difficult to mind control us. Not that they say they can't, but did you notice they had to already have some anger inside of them, and they pulsed it, they increased it. So please carry love in your hearts in these very difficult and even more difficult times. How you can get away from 5G, I have no answers. They're going into the rurals. They're going everywhere. I was just up in the rurals up in Mendocino, and I saw the lines being brought in. They were massively putting in these heavy lines on these already overburdened telephone poles. But it's going in. You're seeing it everywhere, 5G. So please share this with everyone and have love in your hearts. Peace, and thank you, Wendell, for providing this most important